All right, great. So my name's Justin. I'm going to be talking about flower anatomy today, which has absolutely nothing to do with my research. But this is something that every science major at Auburn University has to learn about in biology too. And it happens to be what we're teaching this week. And also, because of Valentine's Day, I had a lot of leftover flowers. So that's why I've decided to talk about that today. So if we look at the evolution of flowers and in plants in general, basically ancestral plants, ones that are sort of lower down on the phylogeny, if you heard Milton's talk, they need water for reproduction, which is a really big limitation. All right, so they're not evolved to be very terrestrial. A little more evolved group of plants is called the gymnosperms. These include things like conifers and also the ginkgos that are planted out in front of Sanford Hall. These guys have seeds, so they're able to withstand desiccation, but they don't have any flowers or fruits. Those are a unique characteristic of sort of the most derived modern-day group of plants called the angiosperms. And angiosperms literally means seed within a house. All right, and these, again, sort of represent almost all modern-day plants that you see, anything with a flower or a fruit. All right, and of course, we all love flowers, including myself. Even though I study animals, I love to frolic around in the flowers all the time. All right, so why have flowered plants become so successful? Usually whenever we think of this, there's an adaptation that allows them to take advantage of their environment. And that's the case with flowers. So why do you guys think, somebody raise their hand and tell me why they think flowers might be a good adaptation? Why would a plant with flowers maybe outcompete a plant without flowers? They attract bees, exactly. So bees come, they pollinate the flower, and then what that really does is allow seeds to disperse and plants to disperse farther than they would have otherwise. The gymnosperms, things like pine trees, often rely on wind to pollinate their flowers, to disperse their seeds, but flowers have taken advantage. Just try to load this up. Flowers have taken advantage of animals to act as pollinators. So I have a short video that I want to show, just in case you've never seen a flower being pollinated. And basically what it's going to do is introduce a little bit of the anatomy of flowers. And what's really important about anatomy of flowers is it's all tied to this pollination, which is critically important in the life cycle of a flower.
Its employees not with pollen but with nectar, and it keeps the pigments at the end of long tubes formed by the petals, so that a long tongue is
petals
to get it out. The hummingbird hawk moth has one. To get the last drops, the moth has to probe to the full length of its tongue, and that compels it to brush the stamens with its underside.
Stamens?
The flowers go on producing nectar well after their stamens have become exhausted and have shriveled, so the moths go on drinking from them. But now they brush pollen off their undersides and onto the stigma.
Stigma. All right, so this guy, the narrator here, and I believe this is David Attenborough from The Secret Life of Plants, which even if you don't like plants is actually a really cool video, introduced a lot of flower anatomy terms. And again, what's really important and why Auburn thinks that students need to learn flower anatomy is it's critical to pollination and the propagation of these flowers. So if we look at a typical flower, we usually have 4 groups of flower parts, and each one of these groups is called a whorl. It's not really important to know the name of the whorl, but to know the name of the individual parts. So first of all, we have petals, which are really obvious. They make up the whorl that's called the corolla. We have stamens, which are the male part of the flower. They make up the androecium whorl. And then carpels, which are the female part of the flower, make up the gynosium whorl. All right? And the fourth whorl, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see here details, the male part, the stamen, and the female part, the pistil. But if we look at a cross-section, we can then see the fourth whorl, which are the sepals, which make up the calyx. So working in from the outside, The outermost whorl is the sepals. We then have the petals. We then have the male part, the stamen, which is made up of an anther that contains the pollen, as well as the supporting filament. And then we have the carpels, the female part, which are made up of a stigma at the top, an opening, a style, an ovary, which contains many ovules. So basically, whenever plants undergo pollination, sperm in the form of pollen grains is going to move from these stamens via some kind of vehicle, usually animals, to the stigma and eventually work its way down to the ovules where the egg is. We're going to undergo reproduction and fertilization. So, for today's activity, we have 4 different flowers, and I want you to count the number of each parts. So work in pairs and count the number of stamens. If you have there's one group that has the lily, the big pink one down there. It's a monocot. The roses or dicots. Snapdragons, which are the little tiny ones, the little pink ones. Those are dicots, and then the red ones are allostremia. Those are monocots. And what I want you guys to do while you're looking at these and counting them is try to come up with some defining characteristics for monocots and dicots. Whenever you're looking at the flower parts, be careful because there's some tricky things in flowers. So sometimes parts can be fused together. Like if you look at the snapdragons, they have petals that are fused together. Sepals, like in the lily, can be modified to actually look like petals. So if you see like an outer and an inner layer of petals, it's probably the outer layer is being tricky. It's actually sepals. And then if you have leaves on your plant, look at the leaves, especially the venation, all right? And try to see if you can see some difference between monocots and dicots. So I'll leave this slide up there, and I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes to go through this activity. Let me know if you have any questions while you're going through it. Yeah, you can destroy the flowers if you want to. Like I said, they're left over from Valentine's Day, so you can pull them apart. Yeah, so these, you can tell these are sepals because they're this outer layer of petals.
What about these two?
Those are the petals, this inner layer of petals. So I already got the sepals and the petals. You know there's 3 of each. How's it going?
Fine. Those look small sepals.
Those are the sepals, that's right. Yep. Yep, and then you can break it open and look at the other ones. Yeah. So the roses are really tricky. You see there's tons and tons of petals, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the sepals, they're really easy to see, right? Yep. Have any questions?
Yeah, what's a dicot and a monocot?
So this one is a monocot. We'll talk about it in a second. But basically there's 2 main groups of flowers, the dicots and the monocots, and we're going to talk about what makes them different. But they have a dicot, you have a monocot, you have a monocot. Any questions?
So, we did notice
Mm-hmm.
that the 3 outer petals are skinnier than the 3 inner.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So even though they're modified to look like petals, they still retain some of their sepal characteristics. Actually, if you look right here, you can see the sepals usually retain a little bit of green.
Yeah, from the where. So, then would we call this 6 petals or 3 petals?
3 petals, 3 sepals.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And look at your carpel in the middle really carefully. Do you think that's 1 carpel?
Oh, it's like 2 fused together.
It's 3 fused together. Exactly. How are you guys doing?
Aren't you speaking with the flowers?
I got a question about why did flowers evolve into needing to have another animal to actually reproduce?
Yeah. So you would think maybe that there's some disadvantage to that, right? Because if you rely on one specific type of pollinator and that one goes extinct, then you go extinct also. But a lot of these flowers are really general, and they've just evolved to take advantage of insects, which have dominated.
But they have
you
both
know.
male and female parts. Why need a middleman at all?
Because we have to have some mechanism to get the pollen to the stigma.
But couldn't they evolve to just do it
Have them in the
themselves?
same organ or whatever?
Yeah.
They could, but then you're undergoing self-reproduction, so you don't get any genetic exchange.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So you lose out on variability.
They're not self.
They can self-pollinate, but a lot of times they won't self-pollinate also. You guys don't need any help. You guys have any questions?
Is that where Trigger got his name from?
We'll talk about where they get their names from. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so you guys should be wrapping up. Normally I would go over each flower individually and give you a really detailed reason for why these are the correct numbers, but we don't really have enough time. So hopefully you got to look at more than just your own flower. You got to look at the monocots and the dicots. And does anybody have, well, first of all, let's just say where they get their names from. All right, so these are the correct counts. The rose is kind of tricky because it's been selectively bred to be very pretty, and it has tons and tons of petals. All right, so the rose is not a great example because as humans, we've modified its anatomy quite a bit. All right, so monocots versus dicots. These are the two big groups of flowering plants, all right? And the reason they have this name is because monocots have one seed leaf. The seed leaf is actually called a cotyledon, so monocot, one cotyledon, and dicots have two. All right, so whenever you guys were looking at the leaves, not the flower, but the leaves of the plant, what did you notice as far as the venation goes in the dicots versus the monocots? Branching versus not. Good job. So yeah, in the monocots, they have non-branching or parallel venation, just like a blade of a leaf. So if you look at your lilies, they have leaves that look just like grass blades, all right? And grass is, in fact, a monocot. Dicots, however, have this branching net-like venation, just like a maple leaf. So again, if you just see the leaves of the plant, you can often identify it as a monocot versus a dicot. All right, now if we go back and look at this table, maybe some of the mathematicians can kind of tell me, what do you see in the monocots versus the dicots looking at these numbers? The monocots are the same, and they're pretty easy. What multiples do you see there?
3.
Multiples of 3, right? The rose and the snapdragon, which is our dicots, always have multiples of 4 or 5, all right? So the other main thing you can do if you don't have the grass or you don't have the leaves is look at the parts of the flowers. If you see parts in 3s, you know you have monocots, parts in 4s and 5s, you have dicots. And again, looking at our lily, we can see 6 stamens here. This is actually 3 carpels fused in the center. And then looking at our dicots, you can see 5 sepals, 5 petals. All right? So I'll take any questions, and whenever you guys go home and look at your old Valentine's Day flowers, try to pick out their parts.
So someone had mentioned about self-pollination.
Yeah.
So we're taught like genetic diversity is good. So do those species just are not as successful, or do they still get
The species that self-fertilize?
Yeah.
It depends. A lot of plants can undergo both. They can undergo self-fertilization and also cross-fertilization. Yeah, like a lily. And oftentimes, like in the rose, whenever we see those selectively bred characteristics, like lots of petals, that's because humans have gone in and artificially pollinated within a single species or a single flower.
So they would maybe not be as robust or just for the lack of those
The ones that undergo just self-fertilization, yeah, there's oftentimes consequences to only undergoing self-fertilization. You don't get the genetic diversity from other populations, so you can't usually deal with sort of changing environment, other predators, things like that, or herbivores. All right, thanks.